Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. I have with me today two very special guests because they are saviors. They're always involved in saving places and things. And I'm going to introduce them right now. I'll get them to tell a little bit about the name of their organizations and what they are doing in regard to their organizations. First, we have Janae Field, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, Janae Field, and she's wearing a shirt here that says Castner Range, okay? And she's a savior, always trying to save the wilderness and the birds and the flowers. Look, I even brought some flowers today. I brought some trees today. These are all artificial, of course. And so Janae is here. And what's the name of your organization?
The Frontera Land Alliance.
Frontera Land Alliance. I had Janae and one of her colleagues on this program a few years ago. And then another savior here today is?
Judy Ackerman with the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition.
Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition. I was at an event at San Elizario a few months ago, and Judy was there at a booth and handing out pamphlets. And I believe you mentioned you'd seen me on television and seen the show. And she said, I want to be on your show and I want to talk about Castner Range. Now my memory of Castner Range goes back further than these two ladies because I was in this area in the 1960s, mid-60s and so on, and heard words about the mountain, Franklin Mountain, and Trans Mountain Drive was being finished up and so on. And then I heard about a man named Dick Knapp who was buying up land in northeast El Paso, and a land developer going to build up way up on the side of the mountain so people have wonderful views. Of course, the richer people would have it. And people began to organize to stop that. And it did get stopped. Some of the land eventually was bought from the Knapp family and so on. So let's start with Janae. Both of you are now dressed about Castner Range. I know so much history on this, I don't have time to tell it. Talk to us about Castner Range. What is this about?
So the Franklin Mountain Wilderness Coalition, the Frontera Land Alliance, and the El Paso Community Foundation partnered for the last 12 months and have worked diligently to conserve Castner Range. Prior to that, efforts have been going on since the late 70s. Castner Range is 7,081 acres of land. It is transected by the Trans Mountain Road on the northeast side of the Franklin Mountains here in El Paso. It's actually located within the city limits of El Paso, and the growth has come up around it. It's not been developed because it's currently owned by the Department of Defense, and from the 20s to the 60s it was used for a firing range. And so it is closed to the public. People are not allowed on it, and the southeast corner got developed, and we're concerned that the rest of it will be developed in the future.
Right.
And so we joined our efforts within the last year along with the congressman and are working to have it go from the Department of Defense to the Bureau of Land Management and become a national monument.
Now what my memory is of Castner Range is in the 1960s. I would hear, we lived on the east side of town, and we would hear big airplanes taking off, going off to the war in Vietnam. B-52s, I think they were huge things and loud, fly up over the mountain. And then I heard about Castner Range. It had been a firing range, especially in World War II. We did not have a campus. We leased buildings from the Army at what is called Logan Heights, old Army buildings over there. We were right at the edge of Castner Range. So I began to do some reading and thinking about this and talking to people that knew about it. Judy, when did you learn about Castner Range and your interest in saving the environment?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you the story about how I got involved, but I'd like to set the stage a little bit to tell you how the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition got involved, which was back in 1978 when indeed the whole top of the Franklin Mountains was owned by one man by the name of Dick Knapp. And on a hot August day, he took his bulldozer and graded a trail up through the mountains, through Mundy Gap, up to the top of the highest peak in the Franklins, the North Franklin Peak, and he got there and he shaved off the top of the mountain. He made it 7 feet lower than it was before so that he could use that space to rent out for communication towers, hotels. He had plans for a dude ranch, mining, all kinds of things that he was going to put out there. And it happened that someone from Audubon, local chapter of Audubon, was taking a hike up in the mountains to discover why there was less golden eagles than there used to be. And when he got to the top, he saw all this road work, and he was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So he went and gathered up many organizations, got them together and said, you know, we need to protect the mountains. So they formed the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition. They put pressure on City Council to do something. And at that time, the land was outside of the city limits. In fact, they had to pressure the city to annex the land all the way to New Mexico, because previously to that, it wasn't even in the city. So once the city annexed the land, then they had jurisdiction. They changed the zoning. There was some fights over it, but through citizens' action, the Franklin Mountains State Park was created, the largest park and largest urban park in the nation. There's bigger parks, but the Franklin Mountains State Park is the biggest park inside city limits. When that park was created in the 1978 timeframe, the legislation said that any portion of Castner Range that becomes available can be made part of the Franklin Mountains State Park. But it needs to be cleaned of any unexploded ordnance. So that's the stumbling block at the moment. We've been trying to protect Castner Range from development since 1978. And this is the closest we've ever gotten, where we're working now to create a national monument, and that would protect that land permanently from development.
Well, this is November of 2016. We just had a presidential election. We don't want to fight that fight all over again now. But we're hearing a lot of people saying, I hate politics, I'm not involved in politics, and they're griping about special interest groups and things like this. You hear this. But isn't it important that we get involved in politics? Aren't you involved in politics as special interest groups to try to save the environment?
The Frontera Land Alliance works with willing landowners. One of our main tools is conservation easement, which is the donation of their development rights on their land. And so we can work with private landowners that want to open up their land to the general public or keep it private, but just protect it. And so the Frontera Land Alliance isn't an advocacy organization in that sense, but we do work. Our focus and our mission is to conserve water, wildlife, land such as farms, ranches, and open natural areas. We were created in 2004 for the purpose of Castner Range and protecting that. And because of the resources that are found on the land, regardless if it would ever be open up for recreation, the value that's actually on the land with the wildlife, the water recharge, the historical and archaeological components are just so significant and rare for this area that is what is important to protect on the land.
To you individually, what is the brightest, most interesting feature of that part of the environment that really catches your attention? When someone asks you about the mountain in El Paso, what are you going to tell them?
I love the terrain, because as the terrain changes, you get different environment at each level, the different ecosystems, depending on the elevation. And in every nook and cranny and hilly area, or if it's flat, it's just amazing what life is found in there.
Yeah, most people do not understand that.
Right, right.
What about you, Judy?
Well, of course, the poppies come to mind first, because the Mexican golden poppies that bloom on Castner Range, and it's the only place in Texas where those flowers bloom. They do bloom up in New Mexico and further to the west, and of course into Mexico. But in all of Texas, Castner Range is the only place where the poppies bloom in profusion when the weather is just right in the spring. So we do have a party out there every spring for that event.
And that's close to the Trans Mountain campus of Community College. That's on the east side of the mountains. With that particular area, the poppies actually go over into the Castner Range, over that old ordinance that is there?
Absolutely, all over the Castner
Okay,
Range.
so you're working with Congressman at this time, Beto O'Rourke.
Correct.
About what can be done to get that approved as a national monument. That also involves the President of the United States, doesn't it?
Yes, a national monument is a structure to conserve land that was created with the Antiquities Act of 1906, back when Teddy Roosevelt was president. And the president can declare pieces of land or buildings or pieces in the ocean as national monuments to be protected. It needs to have significant items on that land or building that give it historical perspective, and of course, or many other things. And the Castner Range is just a resource of flora, fauna. The geology out there is unbelievable. People come from all over the world to check out our geology. And of course, we recently published a research and study of the historical and prehistorical aspects of Castner Range. There's been human beings making their living on that land back possibly 14,000 years. So there was evidence of ancient people living on Castner Range.
There's a wilderness museum there now. I can remember when they opened that. I wasn't there for the grand opening, but very soon after it I went through and I saw that, and the drawings that were on the wall there, the artifacts that date back thousands of years. You want to say a word about the Wilderness Museum?
Currently it's called the El Paso Museum of Archaeology. It changed its name from the Wilderness Park Museum, and that sits on about 17 acres of city land inside the Federal Department of Defense land. So the Museum of Archaeology and the Border Patrol Museum. And they have grounds there where people can take a walk on the nature trails. Spectacular. Any time of year to go and take a look at what's going on out there. It's a beautiful place.
President Obama is finishing his term of office. He's on the way out. Here it is, November. And January the 20th, there'll be another president coming in. Aren't you having to hurry now to try to get this approved by President Obama?
I don't know if we'd say we're hurrying. We've been working at it since the late 70s.
I know you have, but now you're...
But there is a deadline now. But if it doesn't happen, we'll just keep working on it. But the goal and the hope is that President Obama will sign this off through the Antiquities Act before he leaves his term.
And then you have to appropriate money to get that unexploded ordnance off of that area. That's a part of the agreement too, isn't it?
No. So it can be transferred from the Department of Defense to the Bureau of Land Management. The UXOs, if they're removed and the trails are made safe for access to the public, that is an option. It does not have to be open to the public to become a national monument. There's a similar situation in California. Their property is called Fort Ord, and it was also used as a firing range. Right. And so parts of Fort Ord are open to the public and parts are not. And so that can happen here as well. We can open up specific designated trails for hiking, and it would occur through the management of the Bureau of Land Management Office and their plans. They have to do some investigation. So once it becomes a national monument, that's step one. And then we work on step two for the land use side of it.
Well, I wasn't aware of that. I'm glad you pointed that out for us. Judy, what about it? Any information there you have on that?
Oh, Janae's got it absolutely correct.
I hope so.
That's right. Your thoughts about getting President Obama to hurry up and sign it.
I would definitely like him to hurry up and sign it. Historically, when presidents make national monuments, it's usually done in the last 7 weeks of their administration. We're just about there. So we would certainly like it to be protected. And through this process, as we've mentioned, we've been trying to protect Castner Range since the 1978, but right now the concept of a national monument is different. Before we were looking at other statewide or local ways to protect it. So it's only in the last year, with the help of Congressman Beto O'Rourke, that we have been working at a national level, looking at a national monument. And I have to tell you, it has been inspirational to see the outpouring of support from the public. The people in El Paso care deeply about their mountains. They feel like it's my mountain. Right. Little kids say, you know, that's my mountain. And it's just outstanding. People from all shapes, sizes, ages, people that came here later in their adult life, like myself, or people that were born here. They all care deeply about protecting the mountain, and they feel the pain when they see places that are where the mountain is carved up for whatever form of development. It hurts them, and it hurts me, and we need to protect that land, and it's just great to see how many people care.
I graduated from high school in a place called Level Land, Texas, and it was really level land, just west of Lubbock. We didn't have mountains, and I taught in Amarillo, taught in Lubbock at Texas Tech and so on, and coming back here, and my wife and I always think about what really is distinctive about El Paso. There's the mountain, but also the rock fences. Now the rock fences put a price on the mountains because they tear down mountains to build rock fences for us, but those are very unique in many ways to El Paso. We don't have the wood picket fences and stuff very often. So even though you might not get the National Monument designation, you're still going to be preserving that area as wilderness in some form.
We want to. We'll take any avenue to protect that land.
It'd be better if it is a monument in some form. What am I overlooking here? I know when we talked with you a few years ago, we were talking about arroyos. Now wait, we have arroyos there in the mountains too.
Absolutely.
And we have the wind that comes over the mountain there and really blows things around in northeast El Paso. So what about dealing with water and flood control?
Absolutely. As you know, especially in our desert, water is our most critical limiting resource. And to recharge the aquifer, you need to have open land where the water has the opportunity to sink in.
Right.
Once you pave it, put rooftops, sidewalks, streets, then there's no opportunity to recharge the aquifer. Plus, it causes stormwater runoff. So where the water might have seeped into the ground, now it runs off and has an impact on those that live downhill. Oh, yeah. So there's many reasons to protect that land from a water point of view.
Well, that's good. It's important to have that in our viewpoint too. Let me ask you about your work with your organization. Janae, your organization, the Frontera Land Alliance, what is your position?
I'm the executive director for them.
Executive director. And do you have a staff?
No.
Well,
so I direct myself.
That makes it pretty simple, but maybe not so simple sometimes. What do I do now? What do I do next? And then, but you work with other environmental groups such as here.
Right.
And you work with governmental organizations.
Correct.
And private
landowners, yes.
Landowners, people that are doing that. What about you, Judy?
I'm retired from 26 years in the Army. So, yeah, I was going to tell you that story about how I got involved with this issue, which was back in 1995. The Army said, "Ackerman, you're going to Fort Bliss." And I said, "Oh, that's in the desert, right? I don't think I'm going to like that."
Where were you from? What was
Pennsylvania.
Oh, green up there.
Green.
Okay.
But when I got here and saw the mountains, I fell in love with the place. And whenever I have an audience, I ask people, you know, how many of you came from someplace else, and how many of you remember the first time you saw the mountains? And they really all remember it and care deeply. And then the people that lived here all their life, you know, I say, what if you go away, if you have to go to Dallas or New York or something, and when you come back and see those mountains, then you know you're home. And
you know, one of the sad spots about teaching at community college over the years in some cases is students in there talk about some of these places, San Eli, the historic things down there in the mountains, and many of them haven't been anywhere. They just go from their school to their part-time job, come to community college, and they don't go out and explore the world. Isn't that sad?
There's a lot of opportunity.
yes.
So part of your job is going out. Do you go into schools?
We have for Castner Range. There's a specific staff person, Stephanie, at the El Paso Community Foundation, and she has done a ton of outreach to the schools. We have support for Castner Range from the El Paso Independent School District, the Socorro, Ysleta and Canutillo. The 3 school districts have all signed on a resolution in support of making Castner Range a national monument, and if and when it happens, they will get their 4th grade classes out to Castner Range.
Oh, wow. That's
to
great.
introduce them and expose them and teach them how to respect the land.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I've seen you at outdoor events where you have a table set up and you're doing handouts, and we're going to put some handouts here in our green room where we have guests coming so they can pick some of those up. Do you go into schools and do presentations?
I'll go anywhere we're invited, so yes. Of course, the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition is a nonprofit organization, but it's a coalition of many organizations that all believe that we need to protect our mountains as natural open space. So organizations like the League of Women Voters, the Cactus and Rock Club, the Native Plant Society, Sierra Club, but not just tree hugger kind of organizations, the Toastmasters, many organizations belong to the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition. So when I set up a booth at whatever venue, I'm always encouraging people to get involved in the community, look at all the various organizations that support the community where you can learn things and give back. So those are the kind of things we do.
I want to give you a chance, therefore, then, with your organization, you want to give us a telephone number and maybe a website so people could contact you, say, I want to help.
Yeah, right. Since we have no staff, we're all volunteer. The website is franklinmountains.org. So it's pretty simple, just franklinmountains.org. The phone number would be my personal one, so I think you should go through.
Leave that.
Go through Janae.
Yeah.
Go through the
So they can go
Frontera.
through that website and get in touch with someone that they can work with. What about you?
The Frontera Land Alliance phone number is, the office number, excuse me, is 915-351-8352. And they can reach me for Castner Range issues or for the Frontera Land Alliance. And our website is thefronteralandalliance.org. And the Castner Range website is Castner4ever.org. And they can reach out to me and I can get them in touch with anybody that they need to.
Okay, now call in. I call in and say, okay, I want to volunteer with. What are you going to have me do first, besides give you money?
The first thing right now, it depends if we have an event coming up or where we need volunteers to assist man a booth, or if we need assistance with signing letters for Castner Range. For the Frontera Land Alliance in this coming winter, we're going to have some restoration work at Wrestler Canyon. And so depending on which avenue they want to take, we pretty much have anything they can do to
Some
help.
of them get their hands dirty.
Yes.
Now, what about you? What are you going to have me do?
The same thing for the, as I mentioned, from the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition, we have many organizations. So if you would like to get dirty and do some real manual labor, I'd send you to the Friends of the Rio Bosque, where pretty much any day of the year we can get you pulling up tumbleweeds or helping to build trails. So that's just one of many organizations that has things for you to do. Of course, spreading the word, simple things. Today, the social media is so important, and I'm still learning it, but just to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, the Castner Range, Frontera, or the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition, that's something people can do without getting dirty.
Wow, that's great. We're
And it's
getting pretty
important.
close to the end of the program. Do you have any special event coming up very soon?
We do on November 19th. It's a Saturday at 10 a.m. We're having a public forum where we're inviting all the public to come and share with the congressmen and others why they feel that Castner Range should become a national monument. And prior to that, about 9 a.m., we're going to have some entertainment. The school districts and schools that have created artwork over the last year will be on display, and it's some wonderful interpretation by all ages from 4-year-olds on up about how they see the mountain. And so it's an event to come to share your voice, make a stand, and say, and tell the president that you want this land protected.
So this is 2016, and you have that special event coming up. Now, since you're a one-person committee, you sit around and brainstorm sometimes, like, what else could I do in the way of an event to get people involved, and yes, to raise some money?
Right, definitely. It's pretty common. We're always thinking and trying to think of new ways to get people motivated, connected, and involved.
Do you do walks?
No. Well, yeah,
Have
Scott
we?
Cutler does some little hikes and stuff on
Short
West-
hikes?
Oh yeah,
yes.
guided hikes. We
Yes.
do guided
Guided
tours.
hikes,
Yeah,
so
we
that
do
you
guided
could
hikes.
Do something like that and get people, and do you ever consider doing that as a fundraiser?
We have not.
And you wouldn't want to do it as a charge that you have to pay so much
Right,
to do this
'cause
hike with us.
right.
But consider when you come on this hike, and if you're impressed of what we're trying to do to save the mountain, you might want to contribute as you finish the hike.
Yeah, we could ask them for a donation.
Here I am brainstorming
Yeah.
with you right
That's
here.
Yeah. You know, we always want to get people outside and on the trails in the Franklin Mountain State Park. Right now, you cannot go on Castner Range, but you get a feel for how important it is. The trouble is that we sometimes it takes us a long time because we stop and talk about this plant and how's this rock related to the ones over there.
It's going to be a slow walk.
Sometimes it is.
Now they're building a new visitor center for the Franklin Mountains State Park on the west side over there. Have you seen anything in that area that affects you? That you're trying to save the land, but at the same time you want people to have a place to have a visitor center. The development, they're building a big hospital on the west side. They're close to Trans Mountain Drive. What about that? And then we'll close on these thoughts.
I haven't seen exactly where the visitor center is going. The land that's being developed I believe is by private landowners. And so we reach out the best we can to them and let them know about our organization and various methods for conserving the land or integrating different conservation methods into protecting land around the development that they're doing. So we're here, we're open and willing to talk to anybody.
Okay.
Of course, the city owns a good chunk of land there between where the development is going on currently and the state park. And people that look at the mountain, they assume anything that's not built is owned by the park and protected, which is definitely not the case. The city owns land and plans to develop land right up to where the visitor center will go. So you can imagine the change in impact when the beautiful Franklin Mountain State Park is right next to residential and commercial.
You start putting roads in, you start putting utility lines in, you start
lights,
putting all
noise.
Lights and noise, yes, and there go the birds. My prayer is with you, ladies. I appreciate people like you that really are saviors of our environment, because without that we'd all be dead.
We're all connected.
Yes, we are connected. Thanks for coming
Thank
today,
you.
Judy and Janae.
Thank you.
Glad to have you again on the show. I hope that you that watched this today now have been better informed of what's in El Paso, Texas, and what needs to be saved for the future, for our children, our grandchildren, and even for ourselves. Thanks for watching. I'm Leon Blevins.